I'm labeling 2024 as the year of commission transition for real estate agents. This is the year that we as real estate agents have to adapt to the new way of doing real estate and also getting compensated for our work. So there were certain things, norms, standards that we had gotten accustomed to when it came to commission, aka that we were compensated, but now we have to transition into the new normal, into the new compensation structure, and how things are going to continue to evolve and change here in the coming years. Because it's not just going to be 2024 that we have to adapt to this transition or this new way of getting compensated. It's going to continue to change and evolve. So last year we could call that, let's just call that the year of the commission, where every single top story talked about bombshell lawsuits. We're talking about billions of dollars worth of lawsuits, and they're still ongoing, and many more are going to come up, unfortunately. So where we've had the Sitzer Burnett verdict be read, where we had Remax settling, we had Anywhere settling, we had the moment that the Burnett commission trial had the verdict, we had the same attorney file a ton more lawsuits, or not necessarily lawsuits, file a lawsuit where you had more and more and more brokerages be named. So we understand that this is not going away anytime soon. So we have to really, again, find a way to transition the way that we've been getting compensated. So we as real estate agents that are in the industry, we have to find a way to adapt. So today we're going to look at that broader scope of what this commission transition looks like. I'm going to share with you the impact, but more importantly, how to actually adapt. There's a way to thrive in this new normal, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, if we're going to be in this industry, we have to change the way that we're doing business, or at least the way that we're getting compensated. We have to adjust to that. The one thing that we cannot do is stay the same. That's going to be a good way for us to be out of the industry. So I'd love to invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel and share this video with an agent that needs to hear this. And I also want to welcome you to Agent Daily News, where we provide real estate agents the most current, accurate, and actionable industry news that impacts their livelihood. So thank you so much for being here. This year, 2024, again, calling it the year of the commission transition for agents. Every single agent has to adapt to the new normal and really be on the top of your game, or you're going to be left behind. We as real estate professionals really need to raise up our standard, because there's no longer us taking anything for granted, especially on the commission side. Because while in the past, especially newer agents, we would start working with buyers to build up some income or build up a clientele, we understood that it was, well, let me rephrase that. It was common practice for newer agents to enter the industry and work with buyers, because let's face it, it required less sales skill set. So there was less objections that you had to overcome, because, and this is kind of where we got into a little bit of trouble. There was a lot of agents that would essentially communicate with the buyer, hey, you don't pay my commission, it's the seller. You know, that messaging just continued to happen on and on and on. And then ultimately, again, we have all of these lawsuits coming up. But that was part of it. Of course, it wasn't everything, but that was a part of the messaging that real estate agents were getting wrong, myself included, when I first started. So that's something that we, so when it comes to newer agents, that was a big lifeline, working with buyers, because again, there was less sales skill set required. Now, don't mishear me. You still had to be a real estate professional and help show homes, negotiate, and all that fun stuff. But let's face it, there was less sales skill set required, because again, you were going to receive less objections. And also, we also understood that the homeowners, they would typically, maybe not all the time, maybe not a majority of the time, but they would typically have a real estate agent already, or have a relationship with the real estate agent already established. So home sellers ultimately had someone that they could call to. So there was additional barriers to entry for buyers agents. Now, again, I say that very loosely. I fully understand that a good amount of folks that purchase once or do a real estate transaction once, 70% of them never come back to the same agent, because the agent would stop following up. So I fully recognize that. But again, it's still something that from a new agent and from a new agent's perspective, that's why it was a lot more appetizing and a lot more enticing to work with buyers because that commission conversation honestly didn't have to come up until today. So until today, regardless if you're a brand new agent or an experienced agent, that commission conversation has to come up. There's no way around it. That's something that we as real estate professionals have to overcome. That's where we have to transition into the way that we work, or our mindset around the commission standpoint, and really work on scripts to better ourselves. So here's what I want to cover. Again, I don't necessarily want to make this doom and gloom, because it's not. There's still a ton of opportunity in the real estate industry. We just have to be a little bit more diligent. You have to be a little bit more purposeful. And yes, it might require, in fact, it will require additional transactions for you to make this a viable career choice for you. Now, I understand that one of the things that I understand that when it comes to newer agents, this is going to be my last point, I promise, but when it comes to for the new agent's perspective, we still have to get into the what to do. From a new agent's perspective, we understand the first 3 years, 80+% of agents are going to go away. We understand that we understand that in the first 3 years, newer agents, the failure rate is 80+%. Now, while you may typically think, or just based off of the context that we've been living in here recently, you might think that the failure rate is going to go higher because, again, the skill sets that are now required from the buyer side is going to be elevated. So there's going to be it's going to be a little bit harder for buyer's agents, which historically have been newer agents that fill those roles. You might think that the failure rate would increase, but I have a maybe it's controversial. Maybe it's something that I haven't really thought it through, but I don't really think that the failure rate is going to go all that much higher. I think that's either going to stay the same and or going to be reduced, because I actually think that the agent count is going to go less. I feel that there's going to be less agents that get into the industry. So I feel it's going to be more people that are intentional about being real estate agents, that know that, hey, this is something I want to pursue and I want to actively pursue it. Now that they have this piece of information on from the buyer's side commission, or how this actually works on this side now, I think that there's going to be less people that get into the industry altogether. So I don't necessarily think that the failure rate is going to go any higher. I think that's going to stay the same and or be a little bit less, because I hate to put it this way, but the quality of salespeople, the quality of agents that come out right out of real estate school is going to be a little bit different. At least that's my opinion. It's a little controversial. It might be a little bit different than what a lot of folks might think, but I think that ultimately that's what's going to happen. So for new agents, what does this mean? What to do now that we know what we know, and now that we have to transition into the new way of getting compensated? I think that first and foremost, we as agents, regardless if you're brand new or experienced, we have to establish a value proposition. We have to communicate the value proposition. So that's the first thing that I want to invite you to do. I invite you to be clear on what you bring to the table. I invite you to create case studies and really share stories on when it was that you as an agent, where your intervention helped your client out immensely. So we have to provide and demonstrate our value, again, especially on the buyer commission side, because that's what really we've been talking about this past 12 months very intently. So I want to encourage you to establish your value proposition, because that's not only going to help you from the buyer side, but of course it's going to help you from the seller side. It's going to allow you to land more listing appointments and close those listing appointments. But also on the buyer side, as opposed to having a traditional buyer presentation, now we have to be a little bit more diligent. I have to be a little bit more purposeful in getting those buyer rep agreements signed. I understand that a lot of agents bypass that buyer representation, but at this point, you have to have it. At this point, it has to be clear on how you're going to work with the buyer and what's going to happen on the commission side, that financial commitment that the buyer is now contractually obligated to. Let me rephrase that. They've always been obligated to, but when it comes to we as agents on the buyer side, we weren't as clear on how the commission was structured. So that's something that I encourage you to do. Establish your value proposition. And again, a great way to do that is by having case studies, sharing stories on when your intervention, your negotiation skills, you bringing on that side of the table helped your clients out immensely. That's going to be incredibly important. Another thing that I want to invite you to explore is new construction. New construction is a niche that I've loved for basically the same day that I got into real estate. There's something about new construction that I wish that a lot of agents would take that industry or that take that niche on, because there's so much potential, there's so much income, I just love new construction, and it's something that every single agent should take a look at a little bit more seriously now, because previously we've been battling this commission conversation with new construction for a while. So that's the devil that we do know already. So we have this, me included, we have this distrust sometimes from builders that they're going to cut us out of the deal and all that stuff. But now, again, we've been battling that for years. We've been battling that devil for a while. But at the end of the day, we have to recognize that we as real estate professionals bring over 85% of the business to new build construction, right? So we are necessary in all of real estate, but we're really necessary on the new construction side. So again, I encourage you to explore the new construction niche. Not only is it a little bit easier to work in terms of the transaction, but it in many cases has higher commission payouts. So again, it's something I want to encourage you to explore. I have several videos on my marketing channel, which is just my name, Jaime Resendez, showing you how to break into the new construction niche. But that's the second thing I encourage you to do. The third thing is having pricing options. So really building out a service menu. What are you willing to do, or what are you going to do from a full service option versus a consulting model? I know a lot of real estate professionals that are working in tandem with those two models right now. So what is full service? What is limited service? And what does consulting, meaning hourly rates, look like for working with clients? That's something that a lot of the top producers are exploring at the moment. So again, there's that full service model where you would see the traditional 3%. I do it in air quotes because again, everything is negotiable, as we know, when it comes to the commission. So they're looking at what does full service look like? What does limited service look like? So you're looking at a reduced standard or traditional commission. And then also, what does consulting look like? What does an hour per hour arrangement look like? Don't be afraid to get creative here, especially again, we're adjusting to this new normal. There's different models that are being created. There's different opportunities that are being created as we speak. So I want to encourage you to explore those options. And something else that's no longer optional here is building out a personal brand. At the end of the day, bringing people to you, attracting people to you at scale is so valuable to your business. And it's never been easier to create a personal brand. Just you're looking at all the social media platforms out there that will constantly push your messaging out there. You're one reel away from reaching and impacting hundreds of thousands of people. Same thing on TikTok, same thing on YouTube, same thing on Facebook. So you're one post away from going viral. So when it comes to building out your personal brand, the more value that you bring to people, the more free content that you bring to people and educate people, the more that you're going to be seen as the authority and people coming to you. So that's the fourth thing that I encourage you to do. Build out a personal brand where you're bringing people to you at scale. Again, it has never been as easy to do that as it is today. So number one, I encourage you to establish your value prop. Number two, I encourage you to explore new construction. Number three, I encourage you to have different pricing options, or essentially building out a service menu with whether that's full service, limited service, or a consulting model. And then number four, I encourage you to build out a personal brand. Again, the last thing that we have as an option in this year of commission transition is staying the same. That is not an option.